Okay, today we're going to talk about films. Obviously, the reference is the representation of Italians in America in the period that we are analyzing currently, which is the period of the Italian Great Migration between 1880 and 1920. We saw cartoons in the first lecture, and now we are going to focus on the moving image. First observation. Films at the time were an incredibly exciting technological breakthrough. The very first films that were conceived with the technology that lasted, still lasting, were shown to the public in 1995. The authors were two French inventors, the brother Lumiere, who experimented like many other people did, but were able to find out the technology that worked best for the purpose. For us today, going to the movies, watching a video on your telephone, whatever, is absolutely nothing. We are accustomed to all sorts of special effects, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to get into that. But if you try to think back, imagine what kind of a shock it must have been and what kind of a thrill it must have been to go to the movies for the first time and see things moving on the screen. It went from the representation of a flat world, from the representation of a static world, to the representation of a dynamic and moving world. With it came a very deep, profound influence that images have on a both conscious and subconscious level. As you read a word, or you look at a photo or a drawing, you have all the time that you want to devote to analyze and discriminate critically the meaning and the message of that particular text. When you have the moving image, the time is reduced to a minimum, and your brain can barely catch the surface meaning. All the rest is done at the subconscious level. So it is a very, very profound and very, very effective way of communicating subliminal messages that stick with us at a much deeper level than simply our memory or our power of understanding. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to show you the very first film by the Lumiere brothers. This is the first film in history in 1885. It is a fixed camera, and it shows workers leaving a factory. There doesn't seem to be much drama in it. It's the reality. It's a representation of the reality. And I imagine how excited people were to see themselves the way we are when we see ourselves in newscasts or things like this. Okay. I want to specify a very small detail. Obviously, these were silent movies at the time. There was no score that accompanied them. In the movie theaters, there was traditionally either an accordion player or a piano player who interpreted the scenes and went along with the action, either sad, slow, fast, happy tunes, whatever. Later on, there were scores that were written to accompany the movie that were given to the players and the pianist or whatever, and that they would follow more or less a general line of music. In some more sophisticated and later productions, instead of just one player, there were maybe like a mini orchestra, whatever. But in this case, clearly, these movies did not have any sound to accompany them. Well, the Lumiere brothers kept making films, and the very first film that caused enormous sensation, probably the most shocking film ever made, that generated a response of literal terror, that caused even the authorities to intervene to make sure that people would not get hurt, is the film that we are going to see in a couple of seconds now. You've never seen anything so terrifying. Well, probably you have, but if you were to put yourself in the shoes of people 100+ years ago, you would understand why this particular movie was a source of literally terror. The only comparison I can make is when you first went to see a 3D movie on a very large screen, a super large screen, and you saw like a scary animal, a dinosaur or whatever, with the mouth open, jump straight at you, and you just jumped up in your seat. Okay, that is not quite adequate as a comparison, but it gives you the idea. Obviously for these people, it was much, much stronger response. Yes, I know, a little disappointing. Where is all the terror? Well, this was the very first film that most people ever saw. They had never seen moving image before. They went into this movie theater, dark, which also in itself was a different experience, and they had no idea what to expect. All of a sudden, on this white screen, they see this terrifying object, which is a train, coming toward them at full speed. And people literally thought that there was a train coming to them. It was an instinctive reaction of fear. And they jumped out of their seats and would run out of the movie theater screaming in terror. Now, the word spread, and obviously anything that is exciting and is scary generates a lot of interest. So more and more people came because they wanted to experience the thrill of a lifetime. Well, what did this do to the makers of this film? It showed to them how easy it was to manipulate an audience, how easy it was to communicate a message that went beyond the purely rational. There was no filter between the image and the instinctive, immediate reaction of the people. Well, if you could do that, then you could exploit the potential of this form of communication for other purposes. And let's see what they did. And what did they do? Well, they created the first comedy. Same year. About this specific film, well, you can see how easy it is to manipulate an audience. You present a situation that has comical content, and as long as you time the sequence of actions properly, then you can generate the appropriate reaction. Notice that the camera is fixed, so when the two characters tend to stray out of the frame, they have to come back into the center. The camera cannot follow them. And I would suggest, but maybe I'm going a little too far, that this very film contains the two major ingredients that attract the largest audience even to this very day. If you think about it, one definitely is in a mild form, but it is violence. And I would go as far as saying that it also contains sexual innuendos. I'm not going to go in this direction, but if you look at it from a deeper perspective, employing analytical tools such as psychoanalysis and other methods of inquiry, well, yes, I think that the two ingredients pretty much are here. One of which clearly in very, very, very evident, self-evident, and the other one maybe hidden. But the secret is out. It's very possible to communicate messages that, despite the content, can trigger responses to a subliminal message that the audience is really not completely cannot really screen and protect itself against. This has enormous consequences for what comes next.